That's right. We're back at it here on Kaufman Corner. The good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, one of the co-founders of Baseball Prospectus. I'm Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB, and we are talking Royals baseball. Thanks for joining us via the podcast. Remember, if you're catching us via the podcast, we're live on the stream. Usually Sunday nights. That's where we're coming to you tonight, where we tape 10 p.m. Central. On the Twitter, on the Facebook, on the YouTube, on the Twitch, on the LinkedIn. We're everywhere, people. You can catch us live and be a part of the conversation. There in the comment room, in the chat room. We'd love for you to join us. Remember, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. We've got a lot coming your way today. This is Rany's baby. I'm just going to tell you this. He wants to take a look, real or not real. A number of Royals have had a much better, or at least better second half, made adjustments. We're going to play a little game of whether or not we think they are real or not real, or maybe what our expectations are for them moving forward. We'll also get you a minor league minute, also talk a little bit of hitting in that category. We'll probably do this for the pitching a little bit later on. We start it right now. It's a little thing we call the Kaufman Corner.
You're listening to Kaufman Corner, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here's your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
And good evening. If you're catching us live here on the podcast, we do say good evening, Soren Petro, and of course the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, with you. Rany, first of all, good Sunday to you. 5 days and then a 3-day weekend. We've got that going for us. And of course, last 3 games, yet another sweep at the hand of the Seattle Mariners. So let's not talk about that, right? Let's look to the future. Why would we bother to look back when we can look ahead? Let's look at the hitters. Don't you think that'd be a lot more fun?
Well, good Sunday to you too, Soren. A historic Sunday. The Royals are 41-91, so they have tumbled to 50 games under 500. I wouldn't say that 50 games under 500 is unprecedented. The Royals have been 50 games below 500. They've been 51 games below. They've been 52 games below 500. They've never been 53 games below 500.
So there's something to shoot for.
So sometime in the next, I could be an optimist and say 2 weeks, possibly in the next week, maybe 5 days, possibly 3 days. The Royals may boldly go somewhere they've never been before. So the Buddy Belt Doctrine is still living, still beating in the heart of this franchise. So happy 50 games under 500 Sunday to you. But we're not going to talk about that today, right? We're going to be optimists.
Yeah, you've made the 2023 Royals the Captain Kirk.
That's right.
Essentially. Of Royals baseball. I love it.
They're about as far from first place as Captain Kirk is from planet Earth. So yes, they are. They are. My metaphors have been stretched to the brink, my friend.
Yeah,
this team has exhausted my ability to compare them to anything on this earth.
I love it. I love where we're at. Well, let's talk about some of the hitters, right, that have had some success, made some changes, and talk about whether or not it's something that's going to stick. Do you want to go like bottom to top to bottom? Who do you want to begin with?
I mean, we could like look just position by position and say where we are today on August 27th versus even 6 weeks ago. Are there more players in the lineup that you feel comfortable at least giving an opportunity to play every day in 2024? Like, who in on the major league roster right now is someone you would be comfortable being in the lineup on opening day next year? That doesn't mean they're good, doesn't mean that they're going to be good, but it means that they've been played well enough that they deserve an opportunity in what we fully expect will be another lost season next year to prove once and for all whether or not they can be a member of a contending roster, of a contending lineup. because that's where the Royals are. They are in solution finding mode. You got 26 roster spots. You've got to find where the solutions, are on that among that 26. If you can find 7 or 8 building blocks and then add to that over the next year or two, that's better than having 4 or 5. And I think if there's one positive note over the last 6 weeks, that a couple of players that we were ready to write off at midseason maybe now deserve another opportunity. They've made enough progress that they deserve a chance to continue that. And let's go one by one and look at who those guys might be.
Okay. Where do we begin?
So, I mean, obviously, solutions, Bobby Witt, we've discussed, what he's done, and his numbers, were better than everyone else before he got hot, and then are better than almost everyone else in baseball since he got hot. I mean, since the All-Star break, which is really the cutoff for a lot of these guys, because there's several of these players we're going to talk about. There have been reports from Andy Rogers at MLB.com and some of the Kansas City Star about mechanical adjustments that they made, all of which seem to be clustered around the All-Star break, that are at least they claim are responsible for their improvements. The correlation doesn't equal causation, but they made a change in their swing. They have played better in the second half. But since the All-Star break, to give you an idea of what a star looks like when he gets hot, Bobby Witt is hitting 325, 361, 644. So 1,005 OPS. When you have a 4-digit OPS, you are not a problem. You are a solution. Bobby Witt is a solution. So, and that's obviously a big part of the offensive surge in the second half has been just Bobby Witt getting hot. And then while he hasn't played in the second half, I still think Vinny Pasquantino is a core member of the roster. I'm going to write off the last 3 or 4 weeks that he was not hitting as a reaction to his shoulder problems, and before that, he was hitting slightly better than last year. I think he's a solution. So you have two roster spots right there, but then let's go one by one, and maybe we go from.
Well, so you're all in. By the way, I want to be clear. You're all in on Bobby Witt Jr. just because you kind of breezed by him. We have talked a lot about him, but this is it. This is who he is.
Mean, my argument about trade not trade, that is purely a reflection of the value that he has established now is so undeniable that if you were to put him out there, every team in baseball would kill to have a Bobby Witt. That's clear. And it's very gratifying to see what
the on base.
The on base, I mean, it is a weakness. I mean, one of the things that we can get into this, but as always, I mean, the Royals, Alex Zumwalt, the bat whisperer, great. The Royals have a new philosophy at the plate. JJ Piccolo is all in on changing the way they hit. They're 14th in the American League in walks drawn. They still do not emphasize plate discipline, or if they claim they do, the results are not there. Like, you can talk the talk all you want. The Royals have not walked the walk in 30 plus years. They are next to last in the league in walks. And I think, they're not far from last place. They're barely out of the cellar in that category. So the fact that Bobby Witt is, his one weakness is that he doesn't walk enough. Well, welcome to being a member of the Kansas City Royals.
Yeah. So the reason I want to bring that up is because his batting average is 68 points higher in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
His on base is 61 points higher, meaning his walking even slightly less.
Yeah,
right?
that doesn't surprise me.
he's almost exclusively dependent upon the batting average for the on base.
His walk rate is actually slightly higher than last year. I guess that's something to be
Sure.
impressed by. It is somewhat surprising his walks have not gone up. Only because he's established himself as such a threat, and they're betting Michael Massey behind him a lot. Like, you talk about lack of protection in the lineup. I think the fact he only has one intentional walk this year is astounding, and I strongly suspect over the last 5 weeks of the season, his walk rate is going to go up, if only because his intentional walk rate is probably going to go up. It is something to watch. His chase rate, which is a more more direct way of looking at just how often does he swing at pitches outside the strike zone, is a weakness. It's not bottom of the barrel. It's like last I looked, it was like 30th percentile, 25th percentile in the majors. Below average, not horrible. It stands out just in comparison to everything else. His batted ball profile is exceptional. His defense this year has gone from worst in the league to one of the best in the league. He still swings at too many pitches. You can't take the Royal out of him, but that is not enough of a problem to make me think that he's not a long-term solution, and really the solution. If you're going to keep him, he is the the fulcrum around which your lineup is built. It's interesting that he really took off shortly after he moved into the number 2 spot in the lineup. We had him, he was leading off, miscast as a leadoff hitter for the first 2 months of the season, something we talked about, and they finally moved him out of that spot and he got hot. But modern baseball, your best hitter should bat second, and he bats second, and I'm fully on board with that. So, yes, he's a solution. Hopefully, if Pasquantino comes back next year, he's another solution. Hopefully, batting probably third, if only to give Bobby Witt the protection that he doesn't have this year, so they're actually forced to throw strikes to him.
Yeah, and that's let's so if Bobby Witt Jr., his power, are we believing that his power is this much, or is he just on a hot streak?
I mean, this much. I mean, what, he's 26. He's on pace for 32, 33 home runs. That might be the high end of his range. He might settle in as a 25 home run a year guy, but that's fine. I mean, no Royal shortstop in the history of the franchise that hit more than 21 before this year. And he's, blown by that. Jay Bell no longer is this bizarre anomaly on the Royals stat sheet. So if he settles in at 25, he's still by far, the best power hitter in Royal shortstop history, best hitter in Royal shortstop history. But he's young enough. I mean, you look at how hard he hits the ball and the fact that he elevates, and the fact that the biggest change in his approach at the plate that has led to success has been his success against high fastballs, or fastballs in general, high fastballs in particular. That was an issue for him early in the season, and he made that adjustment. The single most impressive swing any Royal has had this season, and maybe this decade, was the home run he hit off the Twins reliever Duran, 101.8 miles an hour on the inside corner. And he turned his hands, pulled an inside fastball and hit it for a home run. The bat speed is elite. And the launch angle is appropriate. He's not Eric Hosmer hitting a bunch of line drives 110 miles an hour, but they're not going over the fence. I think 25 to 35 is probably the range he's going to settle into.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned when we were talking last week that he has kind of Barry Bonds-like numbers. At a couple of years younger, his 24-year-old, 23-year-old season is looking like Barry Bonds' 25-year-old season, albeit the stolen bases are easier to come by right now. But if he does, I'm not saying he's going to hit 73, but there is more power. Like, his real power years are still to come. So if he can hit the ball with this much power, I think there's reason to believe that there's, not to count on it, but there's still upside of elite power from this kid.
I would be hesitant to compare anyone to Barry Bonds. If Barry Bonds' career path, and even before the whole PED issue with him, his career path is very unusual for a superstar, like inner circle Hall of Famer, in that he was really 3 or 4 seasons into his major league career. He was still considered a disappointment. I mean, he broke out in 1990 when you mentioned age 25, but his age 21 to 24, he was a good player, but not a great player. And then suddenly in 1990, he figured it out and was basically the best player in baseball pretty much every season for the next 15 years. But the other thing, of course, is Barry Bonds had elite plate discipline. That was the one thing he always had, that I think is the reason why he developed into a superstar power hitter, was that he knew the strike zone from day one very well. And again, that's Bobby Witt's one weakness at this point.
Yeah, I love it. Disappointment, Barry Bonds for 4 years, then got it going. I guess Rany Jazayerli now subscribing to the Dayton Moore 1500 at bat theory. The living proof, Barry Bonds. By the way, we're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in KC since 1994. If you've got problems, whether you're an owner or a manager of a business with a parking lot, Gann can make them disappear. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. All right, where do we want to go next? You want to go to, you mentioned Michael Massey batting behind Bobby Witt Jr. You want to go there, or you got a different name where you want to go next?
I was going to go with Michael Garcia next,
right.
Just kind of stay on the left side of the infield. And, again, guys who we almost working from, most successful to least. And Michael Garcia is the guy we, even 2-3 months ago, we pinpointed as a solution. I stand by that. It's interesting. He's sort of, I don't want to say slumped. His numbers have come down a little bit over the last month or two in terms of OPS. But I mean, even in August, this is coming into today, he was hitting 305 this month. His power was down, and it's 2 extra base hits. But like, even when he's not like at the top of his offensive game, he's still doing a lot better than some of the guys in the lineup were doing all season long. So a 92 OPS plus with really good speed, excellent defense. The question with him isn't does he deserve to be on the opening day lineup next year. The question is he the guy you trade this winter? Because as much I'm not going to rehash the whole Bobby Witt theory, but if you're going to make some moves this winter, you've got to give up talent to get talent. And Michael Garcia being a guy who's a shortstop, not necessarily miscast as a third baseman, but a shortstop who's sort of slumming as a third baseman while he waits for an opportunity. I just feel like there's untapped value there. And I think some team out there is going to look at a 23-year-old with 5 years of club control, actually probably 6. I think he was not going to get the full year of club control. So he's going to have 6 years of club control. You're getting his ages 24 through 29 season, who essentially can be, a league average shortstop with upside to grow offensively. And that is somebody the Royals could market and get a very interesting haul, maybe 2 top 100 prospects. I think that is something that it could absolutely happen. So he's in the lineup for sure, unless he gets traded, right? Like he's a solution, but he might be a solution for another team if the Royals are looking to rebuild.
Okay, so real or not real was the way we posted this. Because right now his OPS is fine when you say, oh, he's just getting his first look at the big leagues. Is he real or not real? Because if you think he's a guy that's not going to eventually be at least 750, 775 OPS guy. Currently right now this year, he's a 699 guy. What do you think he is? Because if a lot of people will look and say there's upside, like you just said, but is the upside there or not? Because the Royals need to make that decision. Because you just said 2 top 100 prospects for a guy that ends up being a utility player is a hell of a get.
Right, sure. Well, when we talk real or not real, it's essentially is their performance this season, or in the case of some of these guys, their performance in the second half of the season, real or not real? I would say his performance in the major leagues this season, absolutely real. Like I do not expect him to decline from where he is now. And yeah, I mean, 750, 775 would be great, but 700 OPS as a plus defender, this is a guy by outs above average, he's in the 97th percentile at third base. Like he is probably a good defensive shortstop because he's playing like a great defensive third baseman, one of the best in the league. I mean, if you keep him at third base, is he really any different than like someone like Ke'Bryan Hayes at the Pittsburgh Pirates third baseman, who's one of the most valuable defensive players in the sport? So valuable that even though his hitting is up and down and he's essentially a league average hitter, he's still considered a borderline star. Like I think Michael Garcia right now is that guy. Not a star yet, but an above average everyday guy. So to me, the question is, will he improve further and become a star? I think there's a possibility.
So let me ask you the questions that are in the chat room. Bobby Witt Jr. to center, Garcia to short. Would you be on board with that?
3 months ago, 4 months ago, yes. Now, today, no. Bobby Witt's defensive improvement. And here's I feel like we have been remiss in not mentioning. There's a guy in the organization that I think we might have mentioned once in the winter when he was hired, and his name has not come up since, and it really should. And that's Jose Agoncillo, the infield coach. Right? They hired him. I think it was with the Nationals. You want to give JJ credit for some of the moves he's made after Dayton was let go. I don't know. I wouldn't have known this guy from Adam 6 months ago. I still probably wouldn't be able to pick him out of a lineup, but they hired him to improve the infield defense. And if nothing else, Bobby Witt going from first percentile to 99th percentile by outs above average in defensive ability at shortstop. That right there is all the evidence I need that this guy was worthy of the job. But on top of that, Michael Massey's defensive numbers are solid. Michael Garcia, yes, we expected him to be a good third baseman because he was a good shortstop, but still, it's a new position. He's playing it for the first time, really. Could have gone badly. It has not. He's played that position very well. The infield defense with those guys, I mean, Nicky Lopez, who had an off year defensively last year, was very good defensively before they traded him. So I think coaching, it deserves a big part of the credit here, but that also makes me feel like Bobby Witt's improvement is real defensively because there's been a tangible change in the way he's committed to defense. And at this point, if you have a good defensive shortstop who is also like hitting the crap out of the ball, you don't mess with success. There's no reason to move Bobby Witt right now.
I agree. So why not turn it around? Why not Garcia to center? Right.
I feel like
we might answer that later with Drew Waters.
Right. Well, part of it is, I mean, do you need him in center? Maybe, but I don't think it's a pressing need. But also, okay, you move him to center. Okay, now who's your third baseman? Like, I would rather have a guy who I think is a very, very good defensive third baseman. Third base to me is a very important defensive position. Maybe the most underrated by most fans in terms of just how much value you can get out of a good defensive third baseman. I mean, I go back to we were just talking about Barry Bonds. The 1 year Barry Bonds did not win the MVP award 30 years ago, 1991. Terry Pendleton. Remember when the Atlanta Braves signed Terry Pendleton, who was a light-hitting third baseman with the St. Louis Cardinals, gave him a 4-year deal for what was a lot of money at that time, and nobody understood why. Pendleton had, in his first year with the Braves, actually hit and won the MVP award, stole an MVP award away from Barry Bonds. And I remember at the time, we didn't have the analytic data we have now. We all thought it was a terrible selection that Terry Pendleton, who was out-hit dramatically by Barry Bonds. But we know now Bonds probably was the more valuable player, but it's much closer than we thought because Terry Pendleton was a really good hitter, was like a plus 20 defender at third base. Like you can bring so much value if you can pick it at third base, because you're saving doubles down the line as well as singles in the hole. It's a tough position to play. So you got a good defensive third baseman. I don't feel like center is that much more valuable, if at all, than third base. I know he can play there, and the Royals don't have. I mean, they were playing Hunter Dozier there before Michael Garcia. I'm leaving Michael Garcia. If I'm trading him, that's one thing, but I'm not moving him to center field unless and until I find a better option at third. And right now, we don't have one.
And one of the suggestions, I put it up a couple of times, was about Caden Wallace, that he has to stay there until Caden Wallace gets there. One of the reactions was one I wouldn't have gone quite this far, but that Caden Wallace stinks. I wouldn't say he stinks, but he hasn't proven to be a legitimate prospect.
He's not the guy yet. Like if he might, maybe in a year or two, he's the guy you give that position to, but he is not. He's not worthy of that designation. He's not a can't miss guy.
He's a candidate, but there's a lot of growth that needs to happen from him.
Right. He's at least a year away.
So right now, you either need a third baseman or Garcia is your third baseman. I agree. You don't mess around. Bobby Witt Jr. is now playing an excellent defensive shortstop. Don't mess with it with what ain't broke. And so I don't think there's any reason to go anywhere. All right, so Garcia is a big leaguer, and you think an everyday player that is defense at third base carries what might end up being a less than desirable third base bat. The defense is hopefully going to be good enough that he balances that out.
I think that he provides enough value with his defense and his speed, like basically the other parts of his game, that even if his bat remains where it is now, which is, like you said, below average for third base, not terribly below, but a little bit below average, but that the entire package is still an average to above average player. And I think there's potential there for him to develop either a little bit more power, a little bit more batting average, and become a league average hitter on top of everything else.
Yeah, I hope that happens. I'm looking to trade Michael Garcia personally.
He is one of the top guys
in that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not moving Bobby Witt, I think Michael Garcia is maybe the number one. You decide, depending on how you feel about Brady Singer, what the market is for Brady Singer, but Michael Garcia might be the number one candidate to actually bring back a lot of farm system talent this winter.
Okay, where to next?
So let's move around the diamond. Let's go to Michael Massey. Let's stick around the infield here.
Okay.
Right. So he's Michael Massey. Remember, had as about a bad in April as you could have. Right. He had, I think 0 walks and 31 strikeouts before he got his first walk. Was hitting. Looking up the numbers here. 173 before he finally started turning things around. We're talking about a second half guy, but really it's more of for him, it was more of a May 1st until, the rest of the season guy. But if you started his season on May the 3rd through yesterday, you're talking about a guy hitting 244, 299, 419. All right. So a 718 OPS, 10 home runs in, he didn't hit a single home run in April. I think he had 1 double the whole month. That was his only extra base hit. But he has 13 doubles, a triple, and 10 home runs in 78 games, half a season. I mean, you double those numbers, you're talking about 25 doubles and 20 home runs from a second baseman. And with a much better strikeout to walk ratio, 18 walks and 48 strikeouts. His OBP is still not great, 299, but I mean, give it one more point, suddenly 300 is not too bad for a second baseman. His outs above average, if you look at Baseball Savant, and that's a good measurement of his defense, is 90th percentile. So again, well above average defensively. Now, by defensive runs saved, which is the Baseball Reference preferred stat, he's 6 runs below average. Some of these guys, there is a fair amount of discrepancy in the defensive numbers. I mean, Bobby Witt by DRS
What's your eye test tell you?
The eye test tells me he's at least average and probably a little bit better. I mean, he's made some very slick plays. We've seen, the double plays, or even the flip play, where some of them were double plays, some of them where he literally could not get the guy at first himself, but flipped it to the shortstop. He's done it with both Bobby Witt and Maikel Garcia on a day where Witt was, I think, DHing, where he flips the ball to the shortstop and the shortstop throws to first to get the out. Definitely aesthetically very nice. But also, I think going into the hole, you obviously don't have the shift anymore, so that's a more valuable ability than it used to be. One of the arguments for banning the shift was that before you banned the shift, teams were playing unathletic guys at second base and just stationing them in short right field and giving them cover by moving the shortstop over to the second base side of the bag. So really, you didn't need a lot of range; you just needed a strong arm and positioning the guy right, and that's all that mattered. I do prefer the version of the sport where speed, instincts, the ability to make a great first step on contact do matter, and that range matters. And I think he has the ability to be a slightly above average defensive second baseman. He is 25 years old now. He had a decent campaign last season. He had a 94 OPS plus this year. For the season, again, it's down to 70. It's all the way down at 72. But since turning things around, he's been just slightly below league average. That's the theme with a lot of these Royals players, is that they're all about 10% below average for the season. A lot of guys around a 90 OPS plus. And again, Massey's much lower than that for the whole season, but since May 2nd, he is in that range at a key defensive up the middle position. So here's the question: real or not real, but also, do you give him the opportunity to start another season as the Royals starting second baseman?
I do. I mean, now listen, you're always in the market to go out and find better. So if you find better, great, and you have depth, and that slides him down, and he becomes a utility player, or you can trade him. Yes, if you're putting together deals and with it comes a legitimate, everyday second baseman that everyone would agree this guy is better, I'm all for it. But no, I think he's earned enough to have a shot. In fact, he's a guy that's intriguing in the sense that I think he could be good enough that you want him there every day and you're satisfied that we have fixed second base, but not good enough to where he wouldn't take a deal. Like, he's the kind of guy that if he could have a better year next year, I think you could sign long-term for a really affordable price and know, okay, we're done there. We have that fixed. Like, that's what I'd love to see him take a step up and maintain it to where the Royals could go, okay, here's a very cost-effective but fair deal for you, Michael Massey. But we now know second base is covered. Like, that's the optimism I have for Michael Massey. Not that he will be a star, he will be mortar, but he will solve a premium position.
That's absolutely kind of a best case scenario. Like, we are obviously, that requires him to actually take a big step forward next year. But I think he's young enough, talented enough. His minor league track record is there. He could do that. And then you have the choice of, if you offer him a long-term deal, I think he'd be inclined to take it. He didn't get a first round bonus. He got like $250,000 or something. He was a fourth round pick. And chance to set him up for life is got to be enticing. Or you don't, and you literally have him for 4 more years after that. I mean, he's, you have him from age 26 through age 30. And maybe, he's not the kind of star player that you worry about trying to secure his services into his 30s. Maybe you just take those 4 years, but you have a solution. But to me, everything we talk about with these players has to be looked at in the context of the Royals have the luxury of being so terrible right now that they can look at 2024 realistically, and all their fans and front office ownership look at it realistically and say, look, it hurts to admit this, but just like this year was a quote unquote evaluation year, next year is has to be an evaluation year as well. You're not going in thinking at all about sacrificing long-term wins for short-term success. So that is a luxury of sorts, because it allows you to take a guy like Michael Massey, who might never be a major, a quality major league player, but might, and give him that opportunity. There's nothing to be lost. If he goes out and craps the bed next year, at least you figured that out. At least you learned, and you move on, and it didn't cost you a playoff spot. And the alternative is what? To go out into the free agent market and sign somebody? Anybody you sign as a free agent market that this team's going to afford is either going to be borderline to begin with, or well into their 30s, or both. Is there somebody out there you would sign as a free agent that is going to have more upside than Michael Massey? No. The upside would be if you make trades for prospects who might be better than Michael Massey in a year or 2 or 3. But even if it's 1 year, great. Let Michael Massey get that 1 year, and you can move on. If he doesn't prove himself, and he does, you have a very nice situation where you have multiple players at a position, and you can make more trades. That's how modern, I don't want to say modern baseball, even ancient baseball, teams made trades all the time, but that's how the Rays operate. If you have extra talent, you move it. You're constantly trading. You're constantly fixing, altering, tweaking your roster, because your roster needs today and your roster needs 3 months from now are going to be different. And your roster needs a year from now are going to be radically different. So you constantly are churning and moving. And so to me, that's, where the Royals hopefully will be a year from now. But they have 1 more year to have the luxury of taking their time with these guys. And I think Michael Massey's above that line, where he's good enough. He might be an everyday player, and he deserves that opportunity.
There is no might with Gann Asphalt and Concrete. How about that for a transition? Our fine sponsor.
You're the best at the sponsorship game, Soren. That's why you're hosting. That's why you're reading the ads and not me.
GannAsphalt.com is where you can go. Why risk liability in your parking lots? Accidents there can be problems for you and your business. Get your parking lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot cuts down on accident, keeps your parking lot as safe as possible. Don't forget, the rough weather is coming eventually. The hot weather finally broke around here. The cold weather will be coming. Weekends are booking up fast. Get your parking lot sealed now before the weather turns. Go to GannAsphalt.com to get more information. Rany, who you want to go to next? Is this a level of Rany excitement that we're going down this list?
Or just a level of controversy. I mean, okay. we're slowly moving up, but all of these guys are kind of in the same area. This next player, I think, in Michael Massey, in my mind, even though they're different, quite different players, I've conjoined them over the last month or two because they're both right on the bubble, and that's Drew Waters, as you mentioned, right? Like Drew Waters, this is a really interesting guy, because again, 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, you and I were both kind of like, probably not going to work out with him. It looked like a good trade at the time. It was worth a risk. He was, excellent after they got him last year in the trade and came up and made his major league debut and, showed a lot of pop. Struck out too much. This year he was injured, to start the season. Came up and was still striking out too much. But here's what's interesting with Drew Waters. Since the All-Star break, he is hitting .230, still low batting average, .318 on base. And you'll notice that's a big gap there, because he actually has drawn 14 walks and 129 plate appearances. As Royals go, that's excellent. It's barely league average, maybe a little above, but that's, for this team, very good. .318 on base, .469 slugging. Right, since the mid-July, 35 games, 5 homers, 5 triples, interestingly enough, in just 35 games. 7 steals and 8 attempts. But here's the thing. So that by itself, a 787 OPS, yeah, that sounds great. I mean, his season OPS is 717. Last year, we got all excited. It was 803. Since the All-Star break, he's hit almost as well as he did last year in a month when we thought this guy was, a huge feather in the cap of the Royals. His OPS plus for the season, 95. Again, slightly below average. His defensive numbers are above average. Not elite, but they are above average. Plus 2 runs by Baseball Reference. Baseball Savant has him at 86th percentile of outs above average. Very good. And his arm strength is excellent. arm strength 94%. Like he has a great arm, good defense. Maybe he might be the kind of guy who's not a great defender at center, but a very good defender at right field. And in my mind, I see him as a right fielder. Is the bat good enough to play right field? Well, here's the thing that got me intrigued. Last year, the fly in the ointment with him as he was hitting so well is that he struck out in 37% of his plate appearances. And this year, him and Nick Pratto were the two guys, even when Nick Pratto was hitting well early in the year, their strikeout rates were so high, I was really skeptical that they could maintain their success. And going into the All-Star break, his Drew Waters' strikeout rate was, again, 37%. He'd struck out 46 times at 123 plate appearances. Since the All-Star break, he has 35 strikeouts and 129 plate appearances, 27%. Small sample size, but strikeout rates stabilize much faster than other stats. The difference between 37% and 27% is the difference between being eaten alive by major league pitchers and being a productive everyday player if you've got some pop.
Right.
I mean, 37% we talk about, it's like Joey Gallo territory. It's right on the edge of like survivability. You know, you can do it if you do everything else well, but you have to do everything else well. 27% is not that much worse than major league average. And for a guy who has pop, so when he puts the ball in play, if he's hitting the ball over the fence, it's an automatic home run. But when he does put the ball in play, has speed enough that his batting average on balls in play is better than the league average. He's hit 332 on balls in play for his career, as opposed to a league average of 300, which is a sign that he has the speed to beat out infield hits. Also, the fact that, you know, he's a switch hitter probably helps there too. So 27% is a big improvement. And that's the one thing I really wanted to see from him. It's the thing we never saw from Nick Pratto before Nick got hurt. And it's the reason why I'm sort of putting Nick Pratto aside for now. But the strikeout rate with him is really intriguing. And that's the thing I'm going to be monitoring the rest of the season.
Can we also say that perhaps he's being graded differently? Like Michael Garcia, no one was really sure of him as he came up. He's playing third base and we're gaga over his defense. But the offensive numbers aren't there. And part of it's because there weren't expectations. Drew Waters was traded for a first-round pick. The former highly thought-of prospect. His numbers are better. He's the better hitter right now out of the two. Like, are we being too critical of him because of what the past expectations have been for the guy?
Possibly. I mean, it wasn't just the first round pick because, you know, at the time it was him and Andrew Hoffman and CJ Alexander, I guess, for that pick. Like, he was one of the guys. But I think it was also just the hype when the minute they got him and put him in Omaha, like, he started hitting, like, raking, and then came up and hit. I think we came into the season thinking one of the reasons for our optimism was that, wow, the Royals really found a gem in Drew Waters. I mean, I wouldn't say it was Cole Reagan's level of hype, but there was definitely this excitement that, the Royals may have actually, you know, pulled a fast one on the Braves and actually done something right. And so when he started the season hurt and then came back and wasn't hitting and striking out too much, maybe we got a little bit down on him too quickly. And it's possible he was just kind of working himself back into shape. But yeah, I think that where he is now, you look at the big picture, he's only played 104 games in the major league level, but his overall numbers this is a league average hitter and an average defender. I mean, he's an average player. He's still only 24 years old. I mean, he's younger than Michael Massey, for instance. You know, he was a guy who just came up as a prospect last year. And the fact that he's shown multiple skills, like he's shown pop, he's shown speed, he's improved his strikeout rate, and he's actually shown the ability to draw walks. There are multiple ways he can improve his offense going forward to become, you know, not just an average guy, but an above average player. And that's what I'm hopeful with.
Yeah, 361 plate appearances. I mean, there's a lot of room for this guy to be better. There's no reason to believe we've seen the best.
And a lot of age for it, too. Yep.
Yeah. You know, so to me, Drew Waters should play every day. Next year should be the year that he plays every day. This year should have been the year he was hurt. You know, he needs to play every day the rest of the way, but they got to find out what he is early on next year, right? Or are you convinced now as to what he is?
I'm not convinced about any of these guys. I mean, I don't know what he is, but since the All-Star break, he's played pretty much every day. He missed like 3 games. And again, I mentioned those numbers. The batting average hasn't been great, but like the walks are there, the pop is there. He's been an above average hitter since the All-Star break.
Yeah.
His defense is very good. I mean, he threw out a guy at the plate today. I mean, he has shown a broad skill set, and he's 24. I mean, he's right at that sweet spot of age, which again, there are so many guys the Royals had going into the season that were in that 24 to 26 range that gave us reason to be optimistic. And of course, Bobby Witt and Maikel Garcia even younger. And for the first 2-3 months, they all crapped the bed. Now they're starting to show signs of life. Hasn't been enough to change the win-loss record, but it's definitely got me thinking a little bit more optimistically about next season. And I do think of all these guys, aside from Bobby Witt, obviously, I think Drew Waters has improved his standing in my eyes and improved my optimism of him more in the last 6 weeks than anyone else.
Yeah. All right. Where to next?
So now we go to a really difficult case. That is the curious case of Mervil Samuel MJ Melendez, who I remain as thoroughly confused and exasperated by today as basically I have at any point in his career. So let's start with the good. Since the All-Star break, when he reportedly changed his approach to the plate and I think moved his hands up so he wouldn't have quite as much need to pull his hands back during his swing. So he repositioned his hands off of his shoulder to get his bat moving sooner, and in the plane, what do they call the swing plane, through the strike zone longer. And if I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, that's because mostly I don't. But I did stay at a Holiday Inn last night.
No, you know what you're talking about with that. You know what that means. It's like
Right.
to not be, for people who don't know what it means. It's like when you come to, obviously no one swings a bat at a straight line like this all the way through, right? You can't generate power, right? You have to get the bat head around and be able to whip the bat head through. What you don't want to do is be chopping down through the strike zone. You want, as that swing comes through, to have a lot of it of the level point to where if you're early, you're still coming through and getting barrel on the ball. If you're late, you're still coming through and getting barrel on the ball, right? And as I'm looking at it, because I think my picture's flipped, it looks like I'm saying the opposite, right? But that's what you're looking for, right? You want that, because it's not a swing that, like I said, if you just do this, you can be in the zone all the time, but you're not generating power, right? The bat is going to come above and finish, and then finish back above. But you want a lot of time where that bat is coming through the sweet spot where it's at. And that's what you're talking about there.
And that's what they apparently made a change. And the numbers bear it out, because since the All-Star break, hitting .294 with a .336 on base and a .518 slugging, right? 18 extra base hits in 152 plate appearances. Before that, the whole
season. What about
season,
5 of them in about 3 days, though?
I mean, he did have a very hot stretch. He had 4 home runs in a 3-game stretch. But I mean, they've kind of been spaced out. I mean, his doubles, he hasn't hit a home run now in 2.5 weeks, but he's hit 6 doubles. So I mean, the pop is there. What is concerning is MJ was the one guy who did seem to have plate discipline under his belt last year. I mean, he had 66 walks, which I think was the highest for a Royals rookie. Maybe since Kevin Seitzer. I think we might have discussed this last year. Or Billy Butler maybe might have done more. And was walking earlier this year, even when he wasn't hitting. Well, since the All-Star break, 152 plate appearances, 8 walks, one of them intentional. So his walk rate is about half of what it used to be. I mean, it's if sacrificing the walks is what allows him to slug 500, it's a worthwhile trade-off. But he's not always going to slug 500, and I don't know why you can't have a guy who can hit better and still not swing at pitches outside the strike zone. So his overall numbers are definitely a lot better. I mean, his season OPS now is 90. It was 100 last year. He's not hitting as well as last year, but given how terrible he was to start the season, that is progress.
Yeah.
But I am a little bit concerned, how sustainable that is. If he's not walking. I mean, his batting average on balls in play since the All-Star break is .375. That's for a guy like MJ Melendez, who's not the fastest guy in the world, and is probably involves at least a little bit of luck. So I don't think he's always going to be able to hit 294 with his approach, and he needs the walks in order to sustain his offense. So that's one concern. The other concern is, even with his offensive resurgence, I'm not sure he's all that valuable a player. I mean, for the season, he is well below replacement level, and that's because his defense sucks. I mean, by Baseball Reference, it's actually really interesting because we've talked about so many guys
So
on this
much better
team.
when you say it, by the way.
Well,
I say it all the time. When you
I
say
have a lot of practice. I too, I've been saying Royals player X sucks for about 30 years now, so it's second nature. But what's interesting is there are so many guys we talk about on this team as having made a defensive step forward. Bobby Witt, obviously massive defensive. Michael Garcia, great third baseman. Michael Massey looks good. We haven't gotten to him yet, but we're going to talk about Kyle Isbel. Kyle Isbel's defensive numbers, amazing. Dairon Blanco has insane defensive numbers. Well, it's like, gee, this must be a really good defensive team. No, it's not. It's not a good defensive team. And the reason for that is there are a couple of guys who bring the numbers down so badly. One of them is Edward Olivares, who we're not going to talk about very much today because he's back in Omaha. And, I wish him the best. And I do think as a hitter off the bench, maybe a DH against lefties, he has value. But that man should never see, really no team should ever give him a glove to wear in the field ever again. But the other one is MJ Melendez, who is terrible by any metric. By outs above average, he's second percentile. He is third percentile for outfielder jump. So he gets extremely poor jumps. He doesn't have great speed. The arm is there. He's obviously a converted catcher. His arm's ranked 93rd percentile, and he's had some throws. He's thrown out some base runners this year. But it's a testament to how bad he is at actually catching fly balls, that despite a good arm, he is an absolutely terrible defensive player, to the point where you have to wonder, would the Royals just be better off putting him back behind the plate, where at least his bat would play as a catcher better than it does as a corner outfielder? And if he's going to suck defensively, at least he's going to suck at a position where you don't get as much offense. Or maybe you can fix his framing issues easier than you can. You can't make him faster, but maybe you can make him a better framer.
I think that's where they are. He's going to get the rest of the year. I think he got the Bobby Witt treatment. You're going to get all year in this spot. They started him behind the dish and thought they were going to play him at both. They're like, this isn't working. Let's throw him in there at outfield. Jeff Passan said with me this a couple of weeks ago, he's like, listen, there are machines that will simulate the slice of a baseball. Get out there, catch 1,000 of them, a week, and get better. I'm all for that, but if he can't, he's a DH, and build your team accordingly. Start moving pieces to make this thing fit. And if Salvi's your DH, then Melendez must be traded. And it's like, well, you can't trade him. You're getting pennies on the dollar. That's more than the zero when he walks away with nothing. Like it does not work with him in the outfield. And at some point, they got to make this team. You mentioned defensively, and let's get to Kyle Isbel next, because at least catch the ball. And then everything you need to know about your pitchers. They either suck, right? And you can move on from them quickly, or suddenly they start to look better because you put good defense around them everywhere. But having, MJ Melendez and his frying pan and wandering routes out in right field, you're not getting anywhere on either side. So put the team together and make it fit. Great. This was the evaluation year. The evaluation is in for me. I don't see what's going to change over the next 30 days. He sucks in the outfield and always will. And either get him behind the dish, and he better be better. But with Fermin, who we can talk about as well, I don't see it. He's a DH. And Salvi needs those at-bats at DH. So you need to make this roster fit. And that means trading people.
Right. Well, I mean, that is yet another, reason why I think Salvador Perez is a lot more expendable than a lot of Royals fans realize. And, I do think there's a very good possibility he'll get moved this winter, because the Royals just have too many other options at the places that they have Salvador Perez, that he's blocking the ability. Like, if they didn't have Salvador Perez, they probably would have left MJ at catcher all along, and maybe playing every day, he would have gotten better at the framing issues. The one thing I'll say is if we ever, and I doubt it'll happen this winter. Jason Stark's written about this recently, but like if Major League Baseball suddenly instituted automatic balls and strikes this winter, MJ Melendez goes behind the plate immediately. Because if you can actually, if they use computer technology to stop catchers from cheating, because that's what pitch framing is, it's legalized cheating. But if you eliminate the cheating that MJ Melendez is incapable of, you eliminate his single biggest weakness behind the plate. You can live with the fact that he's not great at like pass balls and things like that. He's got the arm for the position, because he, even as disappointing as he's been, he's an above average hitter as a catcher. But this is the player and the position that will really test JJ Piccolo's mettle this winter, because he clearly has talent. He clearly has major league ability, but the Royals have screwed up his development in so many ways, starting from the fact that they didn't just trade him 2 years ago when he was, led the minor leagues in home runs as a catcher, and you had an everyday catcher you were committed to. They've screwed up his development for 2 straight years, and I don't know if they can get him back on track. I don't know if he has more value in a trade. I don't know if he has any value in a trade. You don't want to trade the guy and then have him blossom and you look like an idiot for letting him go, but you don't want to keep him and, have him just completely die on the vine. You've got to figure out how to get value out of one way or the other. The Royals have to get value of some sort out of MJ, whether it's directly
or at some point you got to admit we can't fix him. And so whatever we can get, we'll take, right? Because this ball club has to start coming together. It cannot be a collection of guys that again, the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Let's make their major league dream come true. Let's give everybody a shot. Let's keep playing them. Never mind that the team doesn't fit together at all and has no chance of winning. That has to end. You have to.
That has to end. They have to put the pieces together. But the thing I will say is they don't have to put those pieces together for one more year. So,
by the way, thank you for this one from Tyler. I always remember Soren and Passan getting into it because Soren suggested trading MJ after he led the minors in home runs. Soren won that one in hindsight. Yeah, thanks.
Well, you and me both. I mean, we both. I've said this before, but the Royals never seem to. It's not enough to make that the rare mistake. They make the obvious mistake, and when you have 2 catchers, one of whom is one of the best catchers at the major league level, one of the best catchers at the minor league level, and you can't play 2 catchers. It's common sense dictates you move one of them, and they didn't. And common sense has proven victorious yet again. So, but the Royals are where they are now. They've got to find a way to salvage it. So MJ is really the hardest conundrum to me of all of these guys.
What is Kyle Isbel?
Kyle Isbel is a conundrum as well, but in a very different way. Like you said, the defense with him really is exceptional. I mean, and we've seen it. He made an absolutely fantastic catch in the Mariners series where he got just a phenomenal jump. I think his catch probability was like 5%. He caught it up against. So he actually didn't take the greatest route in the world. He kind of, the ball ended up being up against the fence, and he had a shallow route, managed to get there in time, and because he had such a fantastic jump, he was moving the moment the ball was hit, and the numbers bear that out. His jumps, I think, are 96th percentile in the major leagues. Defensive runs saved, he's up to plus 12 this year. It's sometimes I look at these numbers and I think it can't be real, because for a decade the Royals have had incredible defensive outfielders here and there. Gerard Dyson, obviously, Lorenzo Cain, Brett Phillips when he was a Royal. Brett Phillips is maybe the best comp, because if that dude could hit even a little bit, he would have been such a valuable guy. He couldn't hit even a little bit. And that's kind of where Kyle Isbel, I felt like he might have been 2 months ago. But since coming back from the injured list himself at the end of June, his numbers are a little better. Hitting 265, slugging 415, but a 290 on base percentage. He's only walked 6 times in 46 games. Again, nobody on this team walks. If you could just get these guys to take some pitches, they would look so much better. But even with that, his OPS right for the season, OPS plus is 81. It's around 90, 92 cents. He came back with extremely good defense in center field. And he's 26. He's not as young as the other guys. But you talk about the importance of defense. He's another one of those guys where if you were playing for something, you'd want him to be a 4th outfielder. Right. But if you're not playing for anything, personally, I'm okay with letting him start next year as your everyday center fielder. And let's find out once and for all. Give him 500 at bats. He, He's had a full season in the major leagues to develop. He's got 600 plate appearances in the major leagues. It's now or never, but I think he deserves that opportunity.
Well, don't you think an Isbel and a Waters center field, right field combo is above average?
It's
If you can find a left
defensively,
fielder?
yeah, defense, and that's what I'm saying. Like the pieces are there to have a really good defensive outfield. The problem is MJ Melendez and Edward Olivares have been effing it up all season. So find a good defensive left fielder and catch everything. Right?
Yes.
Let's see what happens when you do that. To me, that is intriguing. That was sort of the dream coming into the season with Isbel and Waters, and then both of them were hurt for parts of the first half of the season, and so really they weren't both in the lineup until about the beginning of July, and they've both hit better since the beginning of July, and the defense has been noticeably better for the last 2 months of the season.
GAN Asphalt and Concrete with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. GAN Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find them online right now at ganasphalt.com. One contractor, all things parking lot. That's GAN Asphalt and Concrete. Let's move on because we're running short on time. Where are you on Nelson Velazquez?
Man, I don't know. I mean, it's he's now 14 games with the Royals. So this is extremely small sample size. Also 5 home runs after his 2-run shot today. In those 14 games, he has 5 home runs. He has 0 walks. So yet again, a guy who wasn't incredibly patient in the minor leagues, but showed some patience and drew some walks with the Cubs, and is now drawing no walks with the Royals. So, yeah, I mean, I think his power is very intriguing. He doesn't strike out a ton for a guy who hits that many home runs. He's 24 years old. There's for Jose Cuaso, I think it was a really good trade, and I think he's a major leaguer. I just don't know if he's more of a platoon guy, a bat off the bench, or is he an everyday guy? I also don't know what to think about his defense yet. I don't think it's terrible, but I don't think it's particularly good either, and I haven't seen him enough to form an impression one way or the other. Is he that left fielder? Do you just go with him as your left fielder? I mean, Dairon Blanco, has really sort of fit into that Paulo Orlando role of the late blooming outfielder who presumably is just going to be happy to be in the major leagues and be a great fourth outfielder because he's more than happy to just be on the bench in a major league team and can play defense in the late innings, can pinch run and steal a base for you. Obviously, a really good bunter. He's when you need a squeeze bunt to win a game, Dairon Blanco is your man. So, but I don't think anybody looks at him as like a solution as an everyday guy, whereas Velazquez could be. I think to me, what I'd like to do, I just want to see him as much as possible every day between now and the end of this season, and we can revisit. Let's see what he does over the next 5 weeks before we make any decisions about next year.
I mean, how about embrace the platoon? Right, it's something they do in Tampa all the time. Like, doesn't that have to get to be where this team is? Like, stop trying to find 8 guys to play every single day, play 155 games,
Sure,
and just embrace the fact that the platoon can work. It can work at least 2 or 3 positions. Yes, if you find the everyday guy, great, put him out there. But go ahead and just let Kyle Isbel play against right-handers.
Well, I think actually, if you're platooning, I think right now at least you platoon him with MJ. Right.
Well,
I mean, and left field and
I don't want him in the outfield.
Right. Well, that's the quite right. But between now and the end of the season, for this year, I think right now I'd like to just get Velazquez and Melendez as many at bats as possible.
Right.
All right. So it's a little tricky. This is again, you've got to make one of the moves you've got to make this winter is clear the DH spot as much as possible. If a Salvador Perez trade makes a lot of sense for many reasons, one of which is you might be able to move MJ to DH a lot. You obviously Vinny's going to come back next year. You're going to put him at first base, fine. But we don't know what Nick Prado is. My feeling with Nick Prado is I'd probably send him back to AAA next year. He's got to still make one more adjustment. He's still striking out too much. He needs to do what Drew Waters has done and cut his strikeout rate, and then we'll talk more about Nick Prado. But that's even with Salvador on the roster.
So Velazquez is a total unknown right now.
He's a total. I mean, he's intriguing. He is.
Right.
A potential solution,
so
which
far,
is
so good, like the return for the trade, but
which is more than Jose Cuas was for the Royals. But I don't know. I don't know what he is. And then, of course, speaking of the whole Salvador Perez situation, we finally have Freddy Fermin. And another one where it's like I don't really know. He's got a larger sample size than Velazquez, and it's promising. But we are talking about a 28-year-old rookie who never hit in the minor leagues. I mean, he's been the most pleasant surprise of the season. By last I checked, he was the second most valuable Royal, or maybe third, this season by wins above replacement, because he's been a shockingly good hitter and a really good defender. I mean, the defense. I mean, he's thrown out 31% of base runners, which was average 5 or 10 years ago, but it's much better than average this year with the rule changes. I mean, the league right now, caught stealing rate is around 21%. So to throw out a third of base runners is, one of the things about changing the base running rules is not only have you made speed more important, you've made a catcher's throwing arm more important relative to the other parts of that job. I mean, one of the things about the sport over the last 10, 12 years is, as framing has become more important, teams have selected catchers based on their ability to frame more than their arm, which has led to catchers who don't have a strong arm, which has led to, proliferation of base stealers. The success rate for base stealing has been going up for years. Then you throw in this rule change that makes it easier for guys to steal bases, and now guys are running wild. So if you got a catcher who can throw, that's valuable. But on top of being above average at the throwing, he's also very good at, the pitch framing. I think he's at least average, which on this team,
Right.
given the Salvador Perez and MJ Melendez history, makes him a Gold Glover. He's, he doesn't have a ton of pass balls and wild pitches on his resume. He's pretty decent in that category too. Do I think he's an everyday catcher? Probably not. Do I think he's a really good backup catcher?
Yes.
Yes. He's the Royals have, had quietly not had real issues with that in the last couple of years. Cam Gallagher was a perfectly acceptable backup catcher. I think Freddy Fermin, though, could be an upgrade on that, because I think defensively he's better. He's got more pop than Cam Gallagher had. 9 home runs and 205 plate appearances. That's hard to fake. And his offense basically improved like almost literally every single year he was in the minor leagues. So he's a late bloomer, but I don't think it's a total fluke. I don't think his OPS right now is at 112. I don't think he's a 112 guy. I don't even know if he's a 100 guy. I think he's slightly below average.
I do too.
But I think for a catcher, he's about average.
Yeah, the back of his baseball card throughout the minors says he is not a 100 OPS guy.
Right.
So I think you would expect it, but I feel very comfortable that he's a quality backup.
He is a member of the 26-man roster. Like, you could actually he could be a backup pitcher on a contender right now. I think that's clear.
And I think if you did trade Salvador Perez and MJ Melendez, you ended up splitting more time than what you would normally say a backup. I don't hate it, right? Like if you're gonna just if you platoon him, Melendez is gonna get more of the at bats, right? If you go by the straight platoon, but if he played more in Melendez, because Melendez got some at bats at DH, but Melendez came back to catching, and because you traded Salvador Perez, I like the looks of this team a lot more.
Me too. And then suddenly you free up, you don't have MJ in the outfield. You don't even need him at DH. You free up DH for whoever needs it, whether it's Velazquez or Nick Prado if Prado comes back. Like, there's a lot of benefits to trying Melendez back behind the plate. And that's something I wouldn't have dreamed I'd be sitting here advocating for that 2 months ago, but a lot of things have changed in the last 2 months. And I'm more convinced than ever that MJ Melendez cannot play the outfield for a winning team. And so we are where we are.
Yeah. All right, let's finish with our minor league minute. I want to lob this out. I said one of the things, if we're to talk about this organization and where they're going, is that Blake Mitchell must sign and must play right away. He can't sit on some backfield or complex league or whatever you want to call it, or some hidden spot. I guess he is playing in the complex league, the Arizona League. He has to play. He has played.
Mm-hmm.
He has a 423 on base. I am thrilled. But it is one of the most magical things I have ever seen in my life. He has managed to be a 600 OPS guy with a 423 on base. 147, 423, 177. Batting average, on base, slug. That is mesmerizing, and I have no idea what to think. I can't think he's great. Everybody said don't take a high school catcher. They did. But I'm not, this is not enough. He seems to just be walking to walk, right? Not walking to get a pitch to hit.
It is extremely weird. And the one, I wouldn't call it a defense, but the one piece of context, the only piece of context I can really give you is that it's 13 games, right? And in 13 games, literally anything can happen. The Arizona Complex League is over. His season is over as far as we can tell. So these numbers are what they are. And yes, he has proven the ability to walk, which, again, speaking from decades of experience as a Royals fan, is not something I take for granted or take lightly. But what he has not proven is an ability to hit. He has 5 hits in 13 games. His professional career is 5 hits, 1 double and 4 singles. His strikeout rate, not terrible. 14 strikeouts and 52 plate appearances, about a 27%, 28% strikeout rate, but not great for a guy who's was already turned 19 and playing in a complex league, older than most of the guys he's probably seeing in that league for a first round pick. I'm not too concerned about it. I mean, Bobby Witt, sort of famously did not hit well at all in his pro debut, and he was even older. And his strikeout rate, well, was about 20%, so it's a little bit less. But I remember the one thing I remember hearing about Bobby Witt even then, because his numbers, I think he slugged like 315 or something, was that the batted ball data, which we don't have on a lot of these guys in the minor leagues, but obviously in the majors, everyone trusts that stuff now. His batted ball data was elite. Nobody gave me the data, but you heard from multiple sources the internal stuff. They were not worried about Bobby Witt. He was hitting the ball really hard, and I think that's borne out. I'm very curious to get that information. If anybody out there has that proprietary information, please, by all means, share it with us. Blake Mitchell only had 20 plate appearances where he didn't strike out, so only 20 batted balls. I'd love to know what those 20 batted balls showed. But I have there's no evidence yet that he can hit. It's only 13 games, but I mentioned, he didn't go to the Arizona. He didn't, his season is over. Well, he's not getting promoted to high A ball, or at least it appears not, because the season ended on Tuesday. It's Sunday now. And to the best of my knowledge, he has not been promoted. And if he was going to be, that would have happened by now. The reason I bring that up, and the reason I think why you and I are both a little teensy bit concerned, is I'm not even going to mention the names of the players the Royals, who were drafted ahead of Blake Mitchell. Yes, the Royals should have had the 5th pick in the draft if we didn't have a lottery, and the 5th pick in the draft was an elite guy, Walker Jenkins, and Walker Jenkins is hitting .333 and slugging .537 and already got promoted to A ball. Okay, but we're not talking about those guys. No, we're not talking about ifs, ands, or buts. We're talking about what the Royals could have done. Let's look at, and I'm not going to cherry pick, okay? I'm going to look at, very quickly, the next 10 guys, maybe even the next 12 guys that were taken after Blake Mitchell in this year's the draft. All right.
And I will, just as a sidebar, say that there are 2 guys that you're going to mention, and 2 guys only, that got more money than he did.
That's a good point. That they all, right, only 1, 2, was there 2 guys? I actually only see.
There were 2.
Oh, right. The 9th pick and the 11th pick got more money.
Chase Dollander
Right.
and Nolan Chanel.
Yep.
They got more money, so even though they went later, the Royals obviously were playing some signability games. So if those 2 would outperform him, it wouldn't freak me out.
Right. But by the same token, all the other guys got less. And with the exception of, 1 or 2.
Matt Shaw got
about the same. Noble Meyer got 400,000 less. Tommy Troy $500,000 less. The rest of them at least 700,000 less. Like the Royals could have taken those guys and had more money for the rest of the draft. So let's just keep that in mind. But let's just go from picks 9. The Royals picked 8. Let's go picks 9 through 20 real quick. The 9th pick was Chase Dollander. He has not made his professional debut. He was a college pitcher, considered a possible number 1 going into the draft, had a disappointing season. He might either be rested by the Rockies, or they may be tweaking his delivery because they figured out something that he was doing wrong. But fine. The number 9 pick has not played. The number 10 pick, Noble Meyer, high school pitcher. In fact, probably the one guy who might have been considered a riskier pick for the Royals than Blake Mitchell, high school pitcher, but the best high school pitcher in this draft. What's notable here is he made 2 starts in complex league and then got promoted to A ball. He hasn't pitched great. He hasn't pitched bad, but he is 18. He's younger than Blake Mitchell by 4 months. He's in A ball. So he got promoted, and that, more than performance, more than almost anything else, will tell you what a team thinks of it. They thought he was ready for full season ball after 2 starts in rookie ball. Blake Mitchell, drafted higher, got more money, has not. Okay, let's move on. All right, number 10 pick. So that was the number 10 pick. Number 11 pick, you probably heard of Nolan Shanuel because he is the fastest moving college hitter or any hitter from the draft to the major leagues in 40 years. Right? He is starting every day for the, leading off for the Los Angeles Angels like 5 weeks after he got drafted. Coming into today, he had a .516 on base percentage in the major leagues. I should point out 7 walks and 4 strikeouts in 7 games. Small sample size. Everyone said this guy was the most polished college hitter in the draft. Maybe not a lot of upside, but when you're ready for the major leagues a month after you were drafted, you don't need much upside. You're a major leaguer already. Like, hell of a pick, So give them credit there. Maybe he'll go the way of Brandon Finnegan, and this year is the highlight of his career. But he's not a pitcher; he's a hitter, and I'm thinking, no, this guy's gonna be a really, he's gonna be an everyday first baseman in the major leagues. He already is.
Yes.
Moving on, number 12, Tommy Troy, college guy. So again, more polished, but only 21. Again, Blake Mitchell's already 19 now, so most of these college guys are only 2.5 years older than him. We'll ignore what they do in rookie ball. A lot of these guys played in rookie ball for like 3-4 games, got their feet wet, went to full season ball. Hitting 247, 341, 480. And he is playing mostly shortstop. And he didn't go to low A. He went to high A ball. He's already hitting. He's raking. Maybe not raking, but hitting very well at a high A ball level. Matt Shaw, taken with the next pick. So now we're at number 13. Matt Shaw, he's playing shortstop as well and second base. Yes, he's a middle infielder. He's hitting 393, slugging 655 in high A ball for the Cubs. He skipped low A ball entirely, hitting 393. All right. He's also 21 years old. And then we get to your guy and my guy, number 14 pick overall, Kyle Teel. I remember this name.
Oh, I do.
If I were in the Royals draft room, Kyle Teel is the guy I would have drafted with that pick. The Royals wanted a catcher, but they took a high school guy. I wanted the college guy, Kyle Teel. Kyle Teel has only got 10 games so far in high A ball. In those 10 games, he's hitting 436.
Yeah.
He has a 531 on base, 8 walks and 7 strikeouts. He's even thrown out 5 of 17 base runners, 29%. Blake Mitchell's at 21%. I guess we should point that out too. Doesn't mean a ton, but anyway, he's hitting 436. Doesn't really matter what he's doing behind the plate. And he's, again, 21 years old, just 2.5 years older than Kyle Teel. Next pick, the 15th pick overall, Jacob Gonzalez. This is the White Sox guy. He's not hitting very well. He's in full season ball, hitting 211, on base and slugging under 300. Oh, you might have noticed Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams were fired. So,
yes.
All right. So, yes, there was a guy drafted after Blake Mitchell I wouldn't want. Their GM isn't employed either. After him, the 16th pick, Bryce Eldridge, the Giants. This was a high school guy. All right. So, not a college guy, high school guy. Rookie ball, 16 games, OPS of 1,041. He's already in low A ball. He got promoted. He's 6 of 12 since getting promoted. He's 18 years old. He's an outfielder, but he is hitting the crap out of the ball. All right. I have not skipped over anyone yet. 17th pick, Enrique Bradfield, an elite defensive outfielder from Vanderbilt. College guy, more polished, but he's also in low A ball, hitting 316, 535 OBP. In 13 games, he has 15 stolen bases in 13 games with a 500 OBP. This is like, leadoff hitter, just central casting right here. He's raking as well. 18th pick, Brock Wilken, Milwaukee Brewers. He went to high A ball as a college guy, 268, 429, 409. All right, and I realize this is becoming a broken record, but I just want to point out, we were told that this was a historically strong draft. And those results are bearing out very quickly here. Braden Taylor, the 19th pick in the draft by the Tampa Bay Rays. He in A ball only hitting 222, but 340 on base, 400 slugging. Good secondary skills. And then finally, and I end with this guy on purpose, the 20th pick, Arjun Nimala. You may remember the name. High school guy, only 17 years old, went to the Blue Jays. He's only played 9 games in rookie ball, did not get promoted. like Blake Mitchell. Only had 5 hits, but in 25 at bats, he's hitting 200 with a 500 OBP. So yeah, Blake Mitchell's 423 OBP still looks good. Arjun Nimmo has a 500 OBP, 320 slug. Played shortstop. And did I mention he's 15 months younger than Blake Mitchell? So his season is over, but he will be younger at the end of next season than Blake Mitchell was on the day he was drafted. That's 12 picks in a row. Chase Dollander hasn't played. Jacob Gonzalez got his GM fired. The other 10 guys are somewhere between really promising and insanely promising and already starting at a major league team caliber. So, yeah, Danny Oliveros, you better be right about Blake Mitchell because the other teams after you were right.
Yes. Yeah, you better hit. You better get going. Let's acknowledge some of the wit in the chat room. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember you can be a part of the conversation. Buccaneer Bruce. So the Royals drafted the wrong guy. Is that what you're getting at there?
I don't know.
And then my favorite, Drury horror stories. It was always stupid. The clown car drove straight into it and honked twice in celebration, right? Which gave us honk, 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 honk.
The clown car's on fire. They are living up to their name.
That was dubbed.
If there's one legacy of Kauffman Corner when all is said and done, Soren, it may be that the Royals from now on are known among the most loyal members of their fan base as the clown cars on fire. I think that's going to be our ultimate legacy.
Yeah, I think that may be our greatest contribution to helping the fan base get through what has been a difficult season, no doubt. Listen, with free consultations, no commission, and in-house crews, every project coming with a written warranty, GAN Asphalt is the best when it comes to keeping your parking lot safer, help your business avoid unnecessary delays and costs. Don't be caught with liability issues. Get a brightly striped parking lot, whether it just needs sealing. Remember, weekends are filling up fast. Cold weather's coming, so grab your date now. Go to GANasphalt.com. That's GANasphalt.com for more information, or call 816-484-3338. That'll do it for us. We'll get into the pitching side of things here probably next week, but certainly soon to come. Still going to give our lessons that we've learned about what not to do. That's on down the road as well in a future edition of Kauffman Corner. So for the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on Kauffman Corner.